everyone, to the Actors Podcast, episode 4. I know it took forever, but we're finally here. And I want to introduce and welcome my lovely guest and my favorite agent, Vickie Evans. Hi, Vickie.
Hey there, Jamal. How are you today?
Doing wonderful, dear. How about yourself?
Doing great. It's not raining. The sun's trying to shine. So I think all is good.
Yes, it's a blessed day. I love it.
Yes, indeed.
So, since we're finally here, we're in the summer, it's 2024, and now we're waiting for our big break. So, what's going on in the voiceover world?
Wow. Well, business is pretty much thus far been as usual. Of course, when we come back from a holiday, it's usually a little slower. I think people get so relaxed that it takes them a while to get geared back up again. But I have faith that it will get busy once again, and we'll have all kinds of wonderful auditions out there for our talent.
Lovely. And I'm looking forward to that as well. So, to dig a little deeper into the voiceover world, um, how long have you been in the business when it comes to voiceover?
I've been in the business since 1989. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I have seen this business go through a lot of different reinventions, if you will, on the way things are done. However, I think that the way things are happening in this business right now really, probably the greatest because it allows newer talent and talent who are really trying to get their foot in the door, I believe a better opportunity because our clients are much more open to working with talent that are not directly in their market.
Which makes sense because right now, with everything that's social media and things that are interconnected and connected, it makes sense that now with studios and everybody else that's putting their information and showing their talents all over the world, it does make sense to broaden the horizons. So I like that you pointed that out. What would you say is another great benefit of the way things are now in the modern times?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, personally, I have always, as an agent, I have pushed even back before it was really common. I pushed for the audition process. I would get people say, "Hey, can you send over some demos? We're looking for someone who, is 18 to 35, sounds like, the guy next door." And I could do that, which would make my job easier, if you will. But on the other hand, I have found over the years that a client, although it may be my client's client, because I, work a lot with production houses or a lot of the big agencies nowadays have people who reach out for their casting versus going for an actual casting director. But what I do is I would always push the audition process because I have always believed and I always say that I think talent are chameleons. And if you're going to listen to a demo tape, even your strongest talent who may have the most up to date demo tape ever, you're only going to hear on their demo tape what they've been asked to do, but not necessarily what they can do. And so I have always pushed the audition process and said, hey, let's hear your words. Tell them what you want them to sound like, how you want them to, deliver your copy, and we'll get the auditions back to you. Oh, and guess what? By the way, auditions are free. And I think it works well because it does two things. It allows the client to actually hear the words that have been written for their product, brought to life. But it also allows me an opportunity to let my clients hear talent that they may never have heard before, or hear a talent do something that they've never heard him do before. And so I push the audition process, and I would say that that probably, although it's been happening for quite some time, that is something, and even since COVID, I mean, even for on-camera talent, we're just seeing more and more and more of either self-tape or let's audition it. And I couldn't be. I'm a really big fan, particularly on voiceover for the auditioning process of it.
And what would you say about demo? Do you still recommend that? or talent to broaden their horizons depending on who they're trying to sell the market to or sell their image to?
I'll be honest with you. If someone tells me, if somebody is green and they've never done anything, and they're reaching out and they want representation, what I ask them to do is to put together a demo per se. And mainly what I'm wanting to hear them do is I just want to hear what they can bring to the table. But if it's somebody who has, experience, but they may not have that up-to-date demo, I don't push for a demo because what I have found over time is clients aren't listening to demos anymore. Where, back here I am dating myself, but back in the day, demos were really important.
Hmm.
But now I don't think they're as important because of, like I explained earlier, the audition process. I mean, used to be way back when I first started in this business, somebody might be producing something, and in the script they had father, mother, son, announcer. And back when I first started, they would call me and say, "Hey, I want this person for this person for that, this person for this person for that," and they would just directly book up. And and maybe the father says, "Honey, I'm home," and now I will see an audition come over for the father, and they want to hear talent deliver the line, "Honey, I'm home." Well, honestly, you and I both know they should be able to hire any professional voiceover talent to just do that line and going to get an amazing job from them. But now it's gone back to the day where the auditions happen to such an extent that they're auditioning everything. I'll get a talent respond back and go, am I really only just saying, "Honey, I'm home"? And it's like, yes, that's the audition. And it's surprising to talent because, especially if they've been around for a while, because they know that should not be something that people need to audition. But the audition process has become so prevalent that everything gets auditioned, including the "Honey, I'm home" role.
You're absolutely right because I had that a couple of times with Boston Casting, and it was just this one line or two lines, and it was actually for the show Julia, which I think they were doing season 2 for HBO Max. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
can understand that. I know it seems kind of crazy. You're like, okay, I just have this one line. I really want to bring the
Right.
substance to the character, but sometimes even with that small line, we've seen it many times in movies in the past. They're the ones who are the breakout. Like one good example I would say would be what Silence of the Lambs, even though it's not voiceover, but Anthony Hopkins only had maybe less than 19 minutes on screen time, but he stole the whole movie. Even though the whole
Right.
movie was shot with Jodie Foster the whole time, we all remember that.
Mhm.
But that short amount of
Exactly.
time made an impact.
Sure. Exactly. And what's really interesting too, which is kind of not related, but I'm going to just sort of toss it out there.
Yeah.
The one thing about direction, when you get direction from a client, from a producer or somebody, they're going to tell you what they think. This is what we're looking for. And I know that every talent out there has auditioned it exactly how they've asked, following direction, which is really important as a talent, is to be able to take direction, and then they actually hear the spot whenever or hear the finished product, and they're like, "Wait a minute, that's not what they asked for." And so I always tell talent, definitely provide them a read that sounds like what they asked for. But if you read it and in your brain immediately a little different type of delivery, hits you, go ahead and add that second take with that type of delivery. Because the reality of it is the client thinks they know what they want, but in reality, they don't always know what they want. And so, even though you don't necessarily want to do the casting, if you will, for them, on the other hand, sometimes somebody's writing the words and they're trying to put into words on, okay, tell the talent to read it like this. This is how we want them to sound. But those just become words. Where a true voice actor will read them and, they literally are like bringing the spot to life because they come from it from a different angle. And so I always say, feel free to do that. I think it's important to give them what they say they want, but also feel free to, give them a little different take on it.
So I'm going to challenge that with something in a spiritual sense. I'm wondering in those type of situations, because I've been in the audition room, it's almost like you have to take the logical side and become childlike in a sense where you bring out that imagination and embody in that voice, and you're like, whoa, that's me. You know? So I'm wondering if it's kind of like that in that sense. What do you think?
I think it definitely could be like that. I think that I had a producer one time, and he was an extremely nice, very nice guy. But he would always be kind of conflicted on feeling like after he gave direction, the talent were grasping it. And so I challenged him once, and I said, "Do me a favor, let me record you, and I want to hear you, get the inflection, do the read the way you're hearing it in your head." And interestingly enough, he could not do it. He heard it in his head one way, but when it came to opening his mouth and saying the word, he couldn't make it sound that way. And it was probably, in so many ways, it was the best thing I ever suggested to him because it gave him a different insight on things, where he was looking at it as, I don't understand. I tell talent this is what I want to hear, and I'm not getting it. And then all at once he realized, like smack in the face, there's a real reason for that because he's hearing it in his head a specific way and he cannot produce it. So, sometimes when they ask for certain things, it is an impossibility to actually give them exactly what they're wanting. And so that's when that, taking the direction that you're speaking of as an alternate read for the client is a great idea. Is to, just say, here, listen to this. And I think that I think that is primarily, if I had to guess, the reason that most people who hear a spot that they had an opportunity to audition for and hear it sounding entirely different than what they auditioned, I think that is the reason, is because, that the client who wrote it and gave the direction, realized that what they were hearing in their head really wasn't what they wanted. And so I always encourage talent, to do it both ways. I mean, don't feel like you've got to produce it in, a different take unless you feel it's natural. And then absolutely, I have people say, hey, who wrote this script? I mean, it just doesn't flow.
Hmm.
Well, and sometimes that's the problem too. And especially if you're heavy on where you're really trying to impart knowledge. Let's be honest. If you're talking pharmaceuticals or agricultural or things such as that on a script, if you're talking like that, then it's going to be kind of hard to make it sound interesting or make it flow naturally, like it's coming out of someone's mouth, unless you're actually using somebody who, breathes, lives and breathes that life every day, in which case they can easily talk about this stuff because it comes natural to them. But often they're not the best choice to use whenever you're doing a video for, large, for a lot of people to watch or, as a tutorial.
And I like that you point that out as far as what they're bringing to the table. So I'm going to use myself as an example going into this business now, whether it's voiceover and acting. I have experience in most fields, like a broad field, whether it's government, healthcare, education, technology, trying to think of what else, even law enforcement. And so, in that sense, whenever I get scripts or things that people send to me, I tend to embody them because I've already lived it. So it's almost like it
Right.
does come natural. It doesn't feel forced. But that's why I wonder, that's where the, let's say, the star or the it factor comes for that person because they're so unique, but also they have experience in it. It's almost like you're not really retraining that person because they've already done it. And
I would agree 100%.
I've seen like that before when I got to see the behind the scenes of Transformers, the first one. And the training that they did was at the same Air Force base that I was at, Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Same training I did for flight school. So I lived it. So if they put me in the movie, it'll be a cakewalk because I'm like, I've already went through this, guys. It's not my first rodeo, you know?
Right.
So that's why
I think
I feel like even with studios and casting directors, most of the time, they usually want somebody ready to go instead of like trying to build it up like they used to do in the music game with A&R representatives. That's how they usually build the artist if they're trying to build a brand or an image. Now it's like you already got to come out the gate with.
well, and that it actually brought me to another point.
Mhm.
As an agent, I get calls all the time, and I get lots of them after holidays where people call, people tell me I got a great voice. I really need to look into doing something with my voice, and
Right.
obviously I work with a lot of people with great voices. But you also try to explain to people that having a great voice is just one part of it. You've got to know what to do with that voice. You've got to be able to utilize it in a way that that works into voiceover, where not everybody can do that. As a matter of fact, it's more rare than it is common that somebody with a great voice is going to be able to pick up a script. Now, admittingly, the first time most voiceover people pick up a script, it's probably not as smooth and as slick as it is, when they've been doing it for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
The reality of it is not everybody with a great voice is also going to be a great voiceover talent. And that's the thing that most people don't understand when they're wanting to break into the business is that they think, I got these pipes, I sound great, people stop me at the store, whatever and whatever. My family, they all tell me I should be doing something with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have success doing this.
Agreed. And it's good to have cheerleaders, but you also got to be your own cheerleader. And I know for myself, it wasn't my family that told me my voice. It was actually one of my agents, as well as when I was practicing with law. She was the one that guided me to go into voiceover because I didn't really know anything about it, didn't really understand it. I saw Robin Williams do his amazing voice talent for Aladdin, and we all know that was like the best. Hard to top that, but you get to see that talent, that veracity and how he displayed like, hey, here we go, and it's just lovely. And to bring that,
The game, obviously,
yeah,
that you're speaking about. Yes.
yes, and it's and at that time he didn't like it because he didn't want people to go that way. Also, when Disney started going that way with voiceover and doing big talents, because in a sense they weren't really sure where they're gonna go with this with cartoons and people speaking over it, but it worked out. It worked out great. So I love voiceover. I'm starting to understand it more, and to me, I know it's essential because I keep hearing the same voices every now and then for some of the same commercials. And then I'm just like, okay, they could have put somebody else on this, or they could have had somebody with more passion, as they say. Most of the time, it's usually just like, okay, if you want to buy this car, it's truck month. Here we go, $299.
Right.
Get it before 0% financing. All sales last. And it's like, okay, we went
Right.
through that more and more, more and more. Chop it up, chop it up. 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Okay, nothing else.
The day that people would call and they would ask for the voice of God or an announcer read,
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of that on audition direction any longer. What you get nowadays is they want somebody who is being a salesperson but doesn't sound like a salesperson.
yeah,
And that's what you're talking about there. So between that, we want an everyday Joe type of read. You either got that or you've got your celebrity endorsement. And a lot of those have taken over some of the really nice paying jobs. And what's really interesting is when I started in this business, the talents that were part of the guild, it was a guild versus an agency when I first started, but they were all also theater actors. And they had just started getting into doing, commercial work and voiceover work. And do you know, for a long time, it was sort of people, they looked down on theater actors who tried to do this business. And as you see now, you know, I don't, some of the most famous actors are doing voiceovers and making a great deal of money, by the way, doing it,
yes,
as a a brand ambassador, if you will, and not even being on camera, just with their voice. So voiceover acting has definitely become more of a yes. If you can do it, that's great. And more people who never really thought that they would ever do it are doing it. And they're taking jobs away from the average Joe, but on the other hand, they are adding the idea of a great voiceover talent, also, what it can do for your business. From the days, like I represent some folks that are in radio or television, and I find that most of the voiceover that they do on behalf of production at the station they're involved with. And radio production or even TV voiceover, for a spot, and they work at the station, and the salespeople sell it, and they include this talent doing voiceover, if you will. If you listen to those, there's a whole different feel from them on how the delivery is versus a spot that is coming out of an advertising agency and being actually directed and produced by somebody who is, working on behalf of that client specifically, trying to find the exact right voice. And I find that people who come out of radio and TV, it takes them a while to adapt their audition to what is more acceptable in a freelance community because of it. And I find that most of the people, if they're going to get hired and coming out of that, a lot of times it's going to be from a little mom and pop shop type of ad because that's what they're comfortable in hearing is that delivery that comes out of a staff member or somebody from a radio station that's doing production, and not necessarily from what I would call in a way a slicker type of production.
Makes sense. And to transition, I wanted to go with AI since I know we were talking about celebrities taking jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, that is going on still. Um, but I will say with AI coming into the business now, and now everybody's kind of up in arms about it. What do you feel now? Do you feel like it's a huge threat, or it's a threat in the making, waiting, or we're screwed no matter what?
Well, I feel like it is a threat in the making. As I know you and I discussed at one point,
Hmm.
is that in my market, in the Kansas City market, the types of things that are coming through the talent agencies to be auditioned, I don't think the majority of those are going to be touched by AI for quite some time. I think where you're going to see AI, starting to take jobs from talent is going to be possibly an in-house video that they're not using professional voiceover talent. They're using somebody that they have on staff there that has a good voice that they do okay. That's where AI I think could easily come in as a quote unquote improvement, for what they're used to producing. As far as what I'm seeing right now, I don't believe AI has entirely affected us in this market. Unfortunately, I don't have my finger on the pulse of all the other markets and how they're being,
Hmm.
how they're what they're feeling about it right now. But I would say in our market, I do not see, or I do not feel like I have yet to see where it's taking jobs away. Um, that's my feeling on it. Now I know that the lady that owns this agency, she handles the models, and she said that she's had multiple models who have been you know approached where they want to shoot footage for them to use them just for that for AI, AI in the modeling for on camera, and that has been with her side of the business. She's seeing it way more because of the fact that they want to pay for the model images, if you will, as a buyout, by the way, and who
Right.
knows how they're going to use it moving forward. And so she has seen it on that end, but as far as voiceover goes, best of my knowledge, I haven't seen anything that's like jumped out at me and said, "Okay, we're in trouble." Now, do I believe when people say they think we could be in trouble? Yeah, I absolutely believe that they could be the case. I'm just not feeling it yet.
Okay. No, that's good that you touched on that. And I'm going to agree with you for now as well, because luckily for us as human beings, we still have original thought and we can still bring things, that human experience that I talked about in the last 3 or 4 podcasts, because that's one thing that AI cannot do or replicate. You can ask anybody on the street, they'll tell you the same thing. A computer can't do what a human can do. And we know this.
Right.
So that's why
And
I
thank
feel
goodness.
like, yeah, thank goodness is right. I feel like we could
Yes.
still stay relevant in this business, especially when you talked about the imaging. I will touch on quick. There is contracts in place right now with SAG. The only problem is, like you said, with the likeness and image, they can use it so many times. And yes, it is a buyout. That's why I wouldn't like to do that. Whereas if you're a celebrity, you're going to make tons of money because you could be in 2 places at once and collect 2 different checks.
Although the buyout probably, I would think, would still not be preferable to anybody.
No.
I know that when I send out auditions and the client's asking for, in perpetuity, I get people coming back like, you're kidding me, right? Now, voiceover's a little different, Jamal, and I know you know this.
Hmm.
This client can come out with this script and it says they want to pay this in perpetuity, okay?
Hmm.
And the talent can feel all, bothered by this. But the reality of it is, most of those spots are not going to be used in perpetuity. They just, and in this sense, as an agent, if the rate is relatively decent, I don't find it as a huge problem because here's what I will tell you, especially on the non-broadcast scheme of things, for tutorials, for industrial videos, that type of thing. I can tell you that I have worked with union talent since '89, and I have seen this whole time, I have seen a reuse on an industrial video one time. And, that has gone from 3 years of use whenever you do it on contract, possibly five.
Hmm.
But I'm going to tell you, I've seen one reuse ever. Now, are there maybe a handful of them out there that are still being used that were, nobody knows because unless you work at that business and go through orientation there, you would never see it, right?
Right.
And so we don't know it's being used, but the majority of them probably are not because things are moving and changing, and so they need to be updated.
Right.
And so that, video, that voiceover that was recorded 10 years ago has long since not been used for years and years. So the in perpetuity makes it a little easier to not feel like you've got to try to track or police the actual use of it because the reality of it is sometimes it's just very, very difficult to do that.
Right. And I
So
always got
you almost
worried.
rather get a buyout so you've been paid for it up front and
Mhm.
just know in your head it's most likely not going to play, past 1, 2 years.
Oh, that's perfect. Because to me, I always get nervous whenever I see that because I'm like, well, what if I go with the competition? But I know the rules have changed now because back in the day, yes, you would get in trouble if you did a Pepsi commercial. And then 5, 10 years later, if you were still under contract, they would get you if you did a Coke commercial.
Right. Right. But of course, what you don't see a whole lot of these days, I mean, we do see it occasionally, but what you don't see is where, I mean, the client should be paying for exclusivity,
Yes.
and if they're doing it under the union, in particular working on the national code for on-camera work, okay, then if they are wanting the right to continue to have you in their back pocket as a talent on a Pepsi spot, then you need to be receiving a holding fee every 13 weeks. Otherwise, once you don't get a holding fee on that spot, if Coca-Cola calls, you do Coca-Cola because they have not paid a holding fee on you. And I mean, now as an agent, if you can reach out to them and say, hey, by the way, I have a client wanting to use Jamal Clark for a Coke spot, a Coca-Cola spot. He did a Pepsi spot for you 3 years ago. He's no longer receiving a holding fee. I did want to give you right of first refusal. And you could do that reach. But here's the real problem on that is that sometimes it's not even with the same client. And so now you're trying to, the Pepsi account used to be with, X, Y, and Z, and now it's with ABC. And ABC says, hey, we don't, we've got this spot now. They didn't tell us we had to pay a holding fee on it. Or maybe nobody knows where that spot is now or who has it. And so they're really hard to track. And so if you don't get your holding fees on it, as far as I'm concerned as an agent, then that means they're telling you you've been released. If they pay you a holding fee, that is saying we expect you to still show us exclusivity.
And I like that you brought that to to the masses on that because that's a very key part. I'm glad you explained that because there was a situation publicly that was on the news about this. The rapper was named Flo Rida, and he was suing Celsius because he was the broad ambassador, but they were not giving him any royalties, and he was promoting the business, and it was already agreed to by the lawyers and his agents. But somehow Celsius didn't want to pay him at all, and then of course they became much bigger. They went to a new company and then they thought they could just write him off. Like they paid him for showing up for the promotion, but nothing else. So he
Right.
sued and got 60 million off the deal, but it made sense because the contract was clear. It's just they tried to wash their hands because they got bought out and the board members left. So,
Right.
so they thought they could wash their hands with it. And I'm glad you said that. So thank you for that.
No, you're wrong.
So going forward now, we are in the midst of a tussle with one union, but the union is more about crafty and food. So right now they're in talks with the AMTP right now. So this is another reason why I thought about doing the podcast because we're still like everybody's like, oh, we should be back on. The wheels are turning. We are good. We know there are inflation. We know there's economy issues. Nothing that has nothing to do with us. But in a sense, these factors kind of play into why not as many films taking place. Because even if you look at different states, I've noticed a lot of them haven't been paying their. I forgot. There's like a fee that they pay. Studios have to pay to the state in order to do production fees. That's what it is, production fees. So they have to pay that to the state, and usually they get tax breaks. So they've noticed that there's not that many permits, especially in California, Massachusetts as well, and even New York. I've looked at all the numbers, and usually on a given day or summertime, they usually do about 100 to 130 permits to film wherever they're filming, commercial, movies, whatever it is. You're not seeing that now. You'd be lucky if you even see 20 in most of these states. Yeah. And the numbers don't
Well,
lie.
your market is actually starting to see a little bit more film production. Like right now, they're working on one that is Hallmark NFL film collaboration
Okay.
on a movie that has to, that is a SAG feature film. It's going to be made for television, of course, since it's Hallmark. It's been a while. Years ago, Hallmark used to shoot quite a few films in this area,
Yes.
and we had a lot of films that were shot here. By Robert Altman, Ang Lee. We had a lot of people coming in and shooting, and then film work went away, and we didn't see a whole lot. And our film commission's really been working hard on getting the incentives, to bring these films here, and hopefully they're opting to shoot here, and it's bringing some work to local talent, which is pretty exciting.
It is.
And and it's something that seems to be ramping up a bit here. I'm not saying it's but probably in the past 2 or 3 months we've probably had 3 films shooting. And this one for Hallmark NFL Films is actually shooting now, just started this week, and they're going to be shooting all the way through July.
Good.
But we are starting to see a little bit more, which is we're lucky for. But it's not what it used to be. But it has been a good thing for our union talent. But of course, they have hardly a lot of people do.
Oh, yes, they do. I remember going through that
Mm-hmm.
that phase. So I will say it's not all doom and gloom because yes, there is filming taking place. It's just not as extravagant as I remembered in 2019 when I first started in this business. We were ramping. I mean, we had 17 productions going on at once in the summertime from like 4 different studios. So that's why to me it's just like okay, we went from that to maybe we'll get a film in the summer or not. Like last year while the strike was going on, I had to film Apple TV before the strike even started, and then we had to wrap up. And that was Matt Damon's in. It's coming out in August. The Instigators, yeah, for Apple TV. We filmed that last year, and then and everything was quiet last year. So
Right.
it's just funny how things tend to change and tend to work out just based on the weather. But I am optimistic about it because I know
Yes.
that things will come to a close. As they say, the night is darkest before the dawn. So I know that the dawn is coming, and I'm seeing it now. But there is a lot of competition because of those permits and those tax breaks, like you mentioned in Kansas, because even Ohio has built a studio, and they're trying to bring in more movies like they did with Captain America. I didn't even know they filmed that in Ohio downtown. Most people would have thought that was New York or somewhere else, but no, that was Ohio. And um,
Right.
and then also Mississippi has opened up, Louisiana has opened up, New Jersey built two major studios last year. So they're trying to bring more talent. Of course, New Jersey, some people may not know, is the original place of Hollywood. Everybody thought it was LA, and I'm like, nope, it started in Jersey before Thomas Edison tried to put a monopoly on the light systems because we need that for film.
Right.
That's why they moved to the West Coast. That's the real story.
Well, look at that. You know more about that than I do.
Well, I also studied what is it? Popular Hollywood films in 1950s, and then also film film history. So like that's the thing. Like as much as I want to be, or I am, like a talented actor, but I also want to study it and learn from the beginning and learn from the greats. I mean, that's usually how some people tend to last in this business is they put a lot into it. Instead of just like, oh, I come in, I show up, I get paid, then I go home, and that's it. And of course, we know that in this business, it's not 9 to 5. It never was.
No. No, no, no. Definitely isn't. No, you got to have flexibility. I always tell people you need a job that's flexible, but on the other hand, you need a job because it's a very competitive business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciate the competitiveness, especially once you are at the top and you see the talent, you see the elite, and you're like, wow, I finally made it. But now you appreciate it because you're going through all these different steps through the journey. And I have to dial it back myself because I remember yourself and others explained to me, Jamal, it's a journey, not a race.
That's right. Absolutely. And honestly, Jamal, as you know, also, you can be the most talented, seriously, out there, but that doesn't mean that you're going to, always be the one that does the job.
Correct.
And, I know that probably the feeling that most people should feel is that feeling of I don't understand. I give nice, solid auditions. I don't understand. Why am I not booking? And it's because the audition is coming out, and even in our market, there might be 5 different talent agencies. Well, we're all allowed the opportunity to submit. Not always. I mean, sometimes, you have someone you work exclusively with.
Right.
But most of the time, we're all allowed to submit on it. And so, but they're actually only going to cast one person. One person's getting the job. And so that means all the other talent that have auditioned for this are not. And you got to have a thick skin, and you've got to, you know, have faith in what you do, basically.
I love that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I love that. You do have to have faith because it's the only way that keeps you going. And we have our inner critics, especially actors. And I know I'm doing better with it myself. We tend to be needy every now and then. And of course, that's usually how it is when we're starting out trying to get everything. Like, yes, I want to be on this, I want to be on that. Gimme, gimme, gimme. But we have to
Right.
be patient, wait, watch, learn. As everybody says, just like shut your eyes and learn. It's just keep,
Right.
just keep going through the motions and you'll pick up on something. That's what I've learned even when I was on set was the biggest thing is like, I know a lot of people say, don't do background. But if you want to learn set etiquette, you got to go background because you get to learn about being on set. You learn the camera
Yes.
movements. You learn where you need to step on the line when it's your time to shine. So, in that sense, it's important to do that. And I suggest that for all talent. Even when I was in LA, all these young kids that were meeting agents, They never been on a set. They've never even done any of this. I'm like, you guys are too green. And I was like,
Right.
you got to get out there because eventually you will be put on the spot. It will happen.
You're right. If we're lucky, then you
Yeah.
get put on the spot, and that's what it's all about. I mean, it's a lot about experience, and then the other about being lucky.
Yes. So this is lovely. We're at 11:45, right on the time, right on the dime, and
Yeah.
I think we can wrap it up. And I'm glad that you mentioned all the great things about voiceover. And like I said, I wanted to go especially for that because I've talked about acting, I've talked about being on camera, auditioning, what you need to do, but voiceover is a little different. It's delicate. It's more personable, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would 100% say that. And honestly, I am, I have continued. Obviously, I've been in the business for a long time, and I continue to have enthusiasm about getting to work, with great, wonderful talent, getting to watch people, become better and better, getting to watch them book jobs, and and sometimes get to be that person that someone calls back and they ask for them each and every time.
Yes.
And I love that. That's how it was when I started. I used to say the talent I worked with were like Coca-Cola and Xerox. They people knew them, and that's where everybody wants to get to be. You want to be Coca-Cola
Yes.
or Pepsi. You want to be that person that is known. You're known. They know who you are, and they're going to hire you.
Yep. So I would say for those that are listening, since we know that words are power, words are magic, that's why we put it together. Um, Speak it to existence. So if you're trying to be
Right.
that person, like for myself, I'm trying to be the next big Tom Cruise. I'm not trying to be exactly like Tom Cruise, just the next big star power as Tom Cruise. I have to speak that into existence and I have to do it for myself. I can't let my agent, my friends, my family tell me that. I have to tell myself that.
Right. That's right. You've got to. You got to be your own. You've got to be your own cheerleader, as you said. It's good to have other people doing it, but you've got to continue to believe in yourself in order to make it happen.
Yes.
Yep. Agreed, Jamal.
So thank you so much, Vickie. And I'm going to close
You're
out.
welcome.
This was lovely. Let me see if I have any music here. Nope. Well, we can do that because that's always good. Always have to have a good laugh with everything.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Enjoy life. Smile every chance you get.
Exactly. And thank you again, Vickie, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to jump on with me in this lovely episode 4. So at least now we can finally close it out. We did episode 4. Thank God. As Thor
Yay.
would say, long last. It's been long last, but it's finally here. And yeah, this was
Well,
excellent.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. You have a wonderful day.
You too.
All righty.